Okay, so moving back over to Photoshop after looking at those images, and I just want to quickly talk to you about um, color grading. So we're introducing you to cameras, and we're also introducing some ideas about color and color grading. We'll spend a little more time on color grading and color correction next class, but I just want to give you a chance to shoot some shots and then play around a little bit with colors. But just a quick introduction to color grading. I mean, the idea of color grading more often is we refer to this more in the film industry. So you'll see a lot more examples in terms of color grading for film, but it is related to photography as well. So, this week we're introducing ourselves to the cameras, but we're also introducing ourselves to how the camera is used in more than one industry. So film industry uses cameras, but so does photography industry. So those are two different classes we have, the art digital media 136 or the film television FTVE 160, I think is the class. To check on that, I might have to update that. But you know, when we talk about color grading, we're talking about emotion or feeling. So in this case, you can see this is the matrix, and this is the original shot, and then this is how the shot was color graded. So it has kind of more these more warmer tones, and then they added these greens into the shot, and that's a real iconic color choice for the whole movie. Um, and it's related to the story and the theme of what they were talking about. So the green sort of works, comes from the screen. Screens in that movie have a lot of green. A lot of the effects sort of stem from that color. Um, Maybe this movie is familiar to some of you. Um, this movie is super oversaturated, really intense. There's a lot of oranges and then a lot of blues, but really super oversaturated. Um, this is a real common color grade where you'll see blues and yellows together. So we talked a lot about that. So if you are shooting to seem cinematic, you will want to think about these color grades because they'll really add that cinematic look to things. And so it's one thing we can work on as just making a still image. You can still play around with these colors and still do things. And even though sometimes you're not making a film, you are going for maybe a more fantasy look or something like that. And so this is one good study for you is to really start looking at color grading. Okay, so let's not get too caught up in that. Let's move on. I just really quickly also did a quick search for Studio Ghibli color grade, and I grabbed a couple here. I grabbed this one, and I grabbed this Howl Moving Castle. And you can see there's all these different kinds of color grades, and so color grades actually exist all over the place. They often look like palettes, and it's kind of the same idea. It is a palette. It's a palette of a film that's going across a whole set of time. Um, let's take a look at it in Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my cone tutorial. I got this image that I grabbed from, that's actually the one that's in focus. Let's not grab that one. Let's grab that one. That's in focus there. I want that one. Sorry about that. And so basically, color grading, usually when we do something like this, we'll make a duplicate layer. And I want to show you making a duplicate layer. So that's layer, new, layer via copy. Okay, so this is Command J. Basically, it just makes a copy of your layer. So I could duplicate a layer as well, but that's just a fast way to do it. Command J. So this is just Command J. You can see it makes a duplicate. It's pretty awesome to be able to do that. And I want to do that so I don't mess up. If I change this too much, it's gonna be a problem. Although what we're doing is going to be non-destructive anyway. So all of us so far, well, I think most of us have used the hue saturation. And so when we did hue saturation, we went to adjustments and we grabbed that hue saturation and we added it. And we were messing around by adding colors to grays, but you can see I can overly saturate this just like Fury Road um, and get that same kind of look. And this is a color grade. It's just an overly saturated image. So in a way, you could think of this just in the same way. I could then also play around with the colors and get into the green tones and maybe drop the saturation down a little bit. And, and I could maybe, it doesn't look like the Matrix, but I'm just, kind of going that Matrix look. You guys see where I'm going with it. This is a color grade. It's a pretty simple color grade. Even though we're talking about adjustments, and most people refer to this as adjustment, and that would be true, but it's also a color grade because we're changing the color to it as well. And so we can create a more feeling to the image than was originally there, and just play around with it. So I can make this a warmer, oranger tone, or go back to its original. Okay, so you guys are used to using hue and saturation. I'm going to just toss that layer. I'm going to do a new one with you, and I'm just going to show you this one. This is the gradient map. So let me do it one more time so you can see it. It's right here. It's the very last one. It's called a gradient map, and of course there's all kinds. There's a lookup table. All of these really, in some way, is really the same idea as color grading. I mean, adjustments. It's in a sense the same idea, right? So just think of it for a moment as color grading, but you can also think of it as adjustments. I'm just going to click on that gradient map. It comes out black and black. It's actually gradients. Let me double click on this black bar right here. And I actually have everything loaded. I'm just going to reset gradients and say OK. So this is what you'll by default see in here. And if I just click on one of these, you can see color gradients. They make pretty drastic changes to the image, and they can just in themselves make a pretty cool look. You might just be able to finish right here and say, okay, and then one of the tuners that you'll want to pay attention to would be the opacity, right? And just play the opacity a little bit, and you can kind of tone that down a little bit. So maybe you don't want it so overkill. Maybe just a little bit. You might be more subtle like that. Or maybe you just want to blow the whole thing out, and that's totally cool if you want to do that. So I'll let you play around with that. Let me just go quickly back, and I'll grab the let's grab the Studio Ghibli image here. I'm just going to grab this and drop this into Photoshop real quick. And then remember, we can take an image and drag it into another image. So I'm just going to do that. We just did that with our dog. And so now this sits there like that. Let's put off the corner. And now I can go into my gradient map, and just one thing to watch out for when I do this, just notice that the mask got selected and not the gradient map. So just be careful when you click on it. Sometimes it'll select the gradient map, so you just or the mask of the gradient map. Just make sure that this portion is in the white outline, not this part. So you'll be doing the masking. So we talked a little last week about this. So just be aware that you want that part selected. And then I'll double click in the map, and what's kind of cool is that we can grab colors off of this image. So for instance, let's click on this blue tab here. And just notice when I click on that, it changes the color, and it's asking for color. The top, if you click on the top, you'll notice it picks opacity, and I'm not going to actually work on that right now. I don't really want to do opacity. I'm just going to do colors. So when I click on that, it's actually going to look for the color. I can if you move over, you'll see you have this kind of you have a picker icon. So let's pick kind of this darker area right here. Okay, And then I'll go into the center area, this red area, and I'll pick out, say, the, the red of the couch. And then I'll go to the yellow, click on the yellow, and let's pick the green right there. And so now I'm actually grading off of this image, which is pretty awesome, right? So now I'm picking Studio Ghibli colors for my pinecone. Of course, you can play around. You can do more of these. You can even add a whole nother color. So say, for instance, I like that. I like this little, this color here. So let's put one right here. I'm going to click. Notice when the finger shows up? So my little finger shows up in here. I'm going to click, and it adds a color for me. So it's going to pick the color that it's closest to. But just notice I can come up here now and I can grab that color. And now I have that color. Of course, you can move these, and you can, if you move these, you'll get different relationships between the colors. So if you like the reds a little bit more, you can play them. And you can really mess around with these colors a lot and get a lot of effect, right? So I'll say okay and accept that, and then maybe I can hide that background layer, and now that's my grade. Of course, we can still work with opacity and change that around if we don't like the amount. And I'm being a little bit drastic. I want it to be a little bit drastic, and that looks awesome. That's where I'm going to leave it. So I'm just going to have you guys do a save scene or save as here, and we'll do. I noticed that I left this in my tutorial. Let's go to my outputs, and this will be a JPEG, and I'll call this cone color grade. Okay, and then I'll just turn this off and just say, file, save as, and this will just be my cone. And I do want to see your cone, well, sorry, not your cone. I want to see your picture without any color grade, so I want to see the color grade, and I want to see without the color grade, okay? And we'll do this as JPEG. And we'll say this. Let's cancel that. I'm putting that back in the same folder. Let's make sure it's in the output folder. And I'll upload those into the discussion, and then we'll all take a look at them, right? So that's what I want to show you guys today. So you're going to take your image, you're going to play around with some color grades. You can use the map, the gradient map, or you can play with some of the other adjustment layers. So feel free to click around and just play with them and use them and just try them out. Right now it's more of an introductory, so just go for it and just see what sort of colors you can get. Notice I'm not making stacks and stacks of them, right? So sometimes I come to people and they just have, a whole bunch of stacks of these. It can be really challenging to use all of those and have them all work in conjunction, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. You can. I kind of prefer to have just one as I go, but that's up to you. Sometimes I do need more than one. So we'll talk more about that when we get to a more controlled effort with the gradient map. Adjustment layers. So I'm going to end it there.